corresponding to the 5th day of October. Tonight, Be'ezat Hashem, will be the first day of Rosh Chodesh Heshvan, Haba Aleinu Letova, 2 days of Rosh Chodesh, and a class today sponsored by Elias Perez and family for the refuah shlema of his father-in-law, Shmuel ben Batya. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu send him a speedy recovery among all of the Cholim of Am Yisrael. Amen. Today's Gemara from Masechet Yevamot discusses an essential topic in order to be a true Oved Hashem, in order to be considered a true servant of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I'm talking about this topic because it's the topic of the Gemara. Not that I selected, but divine providence. The mitzvah of listening to the Hachamim. It's not easy. It's not easy. Why not? I'm telling you this as a rabbi. It's not easy because there are many concepts that determine if a person is willing and able to listen. If a person has a certain level of Yirat Shamayim, perhaps it's a bit easier. If a person doesn't have that strong spiritual bonding, maybe a bit more challenging. But actually, this concept, although the Gemara brought it down in Masechet Yevamot, is actually a pasuk in the Torah, in Perashah Shofetim, that says, Al pi Torah asher yorucha, ve'al kol hadavar asher yagidu lecha. Says the person must follow the words of the Hachamim. But it's important to know, you cannot do rabbi hopping like you do shul hopping. Many times people say, what do you pray? I pray all over. That's not a good answer. That's not a good answer. According to the Gemara, Hakovea makom litfilato. A person prays, sure, with a different mindset. When you develop a spiritual and emotional bonding in the place where you pray, and let's clarify for the record, for the audience, that doesn't mean, because I'm out of town, so I usually pray at the safra Synagogue, so I'm going to pray in the hotel. Chas v'shalom. That's not the idea. Obviously, if you travel, you go wherever you find yourself. But as far as concerned, a person should find a suitable place to pray. And there are people who tell me this. Rabbi, I pray different if it's in the Netz Minyan or if it's in the A20 Minyan. And it's understood and it's acceptable. Why? The Gemara discusses the concept of Kovea makom litfilato. That a person affixes a place where to pray. You develop, like it or not, by default, a certain level of bonding with that location. Believe me, I'm telling you as someone who doesn't travel much, I try not to travel, especially during the busy season. Maybe a week or 2 weeks from now, I will be out of town by force obligated vacation, which I understand is important. But bottom line, that a person should always find a comfortable and a suitable place to pray. As far as concerned rabbis, sometimes, and I think that Kahal Kadosh knows me long enough already, but we are, besides a continuously growing local community, we are a very multifaceted type of community, multicultural type of community, multinational type of community, and we are definitely a very international community. Why do I say all this? Because with all of the above that I just said, questions come up on a regular basis. From what time is Minha till something much more critical. Obviously, if you ask me, Rabbi, what time is Minha, I'm not going to answer you, who is your rabbi? Minha is 5:30 and 6:40, I believe, 6:45. Okay, you have a question of the mikveh. Okay, I'll do the effort. You're asking me for a reliable supervision in town, I'll tell you. But these are not the only questions that we get. Sometimes we get much more challenging and difficult questions. So my answer to such a type of question is, who is your rabbi? When I know who your rabbi is, so to speak, more or less I'm able to understand, okay, and my second question will be to you is, Did you ask your rabbi? No, I want to hear your opinion. What are you doing, a survey? A Gallup survey? We ask 100 people. You understand? The Gemara writes clearly, Amar Abaye, al Shomea, Amar Abaye, Kol HaMekayem Divrei Chachamim Nikra Kadosh. And I tell you this now, again, from my personal experience. Baruch Hashem, I was raised this way. From childhood. Because I saw my father, Alav Shalom, asking questions to the Hachamim. And not questions of kashrut. Questions of business investments in the sense of advice on a person, Torah education, including me, when my family moved from Argentina to Brazil. I told you this story maybe a while back, how I stayed in the high school in Argentina by myself, obviously living in someone's house, under rabbinical supervision. Not because I was a troublemaker, the opposite. I was a well-behaved student.
What age level?
15. Why did I stay? Because São Paulo, Brazil then, not today, talking about 1980, didn't have good Torah education post bar mitzvah. So my father went to the rabbi, and the rabbi said, what are you going to do with Yosef, with you? I'm going to eat a chavruta in the kollel. My father had the answer, and had the means to do it. The rabbi said, no. What your son is going to learn with someone that is 25, 27 years old, your son needs the environment, the friends, the seasoned teacher, not just a habruta, an hour or 2 hours a day. So my father listened to the rabbi. The rabbi said to my father, Alav Shalom, go ask your wife. When are you going to make a decision of leaving Yosefico? You know, alone. So you know what my mother's answer was? If the rabbi suggested this, what kind of question is it? Na'aseh v'nishma. Thank God. I grew tremendously in those 2.5 years.
You're sitting here now because of those years.
100%. 100%. I had my allowance every week. It was good. It was good.
Not much, but...
Believe me. It was good.
Rabbi, I have a question.
No, there was no need.
I have a question.
There was, one second, there was no need. Baruch Hashem, between the school and the house where I was staying, Baruch Hashem, it was
more than enough.
very good. They had my private bedroom, my bathroom, good. That's where I learned English. That's where I learned English after hours. After the yeshiva finished, my balabait, where I used to live, he used to have a night seder from 8:30 to 11:30 at night. Night seder, 3 hours. In South America, I want you to know, having dinner 10 o'clock at night is norm. Is the norm. If you have dinner 6 o'clock, like in America, early bird, there is no such a thing. The restaurants don't open till 8 o'clock at night. So night life, it's the norm. So I finished high school and yeshiva, because we had yeshiva post high school. Finish at 9:15. Till 11:30, I can go to the person's house because his wife was alone with a baby. So what did I do? I learned English. I found a teacher to teach me English. That's where I learned English.
Also another reason why you're staying.
Another reason why I stayed. Baruch Hashem. But I'm telling you this, that when it came to different, even when it came to actually moving, the first question the rabbi asked was, which city in Brazil are you moving? If we would have said Rio de Janeiro, the answer would have been, you don't go. Even though it's your parnasah. And Baruch Hashem, parnasah was always good. But it was a need to change due to the political situation in Argentina. Manufacturing wasn't really a reality as the haraba. So the market in Brazil was favorable with its shticks, but that's how South America works. So the rabbi said, São Paulo, okay. Rio de Janeiro, no way. Why? Because Rio today is different. Baruch Hashem. São Paulo and Rio in the past 30 years exploded spiritually. Behemet. Behemet. Exploded that you have São Paulo way more than Rio, but you have whatever spiritually you need, you find. You have a few kolelim, mikvahs all over, kosher restaurants, synagogues, Sephardic, Ashkenazic. But this is how we were raised. Comes the Gemara, and it says that the Torah also gave the permission to the Hachamim, as the Pasuk says, Ushmartem et mishmarti. You know the first Mishnah in Pirkei Avot? Let me translate this sentence. Ushmartem et mishmarti, protect with protection. Now, why the redundancy of the language? So the answer is found in Pirkei Avot. First Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. Remember 3 lessons. Hevu metunim batim. Be cautious when it comes to answer questions in halachic matters. He'amidu talmidim arveh. Make sure that Torah gets disseminated all over the way it is today. Ve'asu seyag la Torah. What does that mean, seyag? The Torah gave the power to the Hachamim to add fences of spiritual welfare. Obviously, Hachamim don't need to establish the mitzvah of ma'akeh. Ma'akeh is a fence. Why is the fence established? The fence is established to prevent, God forbid, accidents. That's why balconies have a railing, swimming pool have a fence for that reason. That is a mitzvah from the Torah. But interesting enough, the pasuk of the mitzvah of Ma'akeh, and I said this in Chol HaMoed Sukkot. Remember in Chol HaMoed Sukkot, we discussed the war of Gog uMagog, the famous war, right? Now in the Aventura, I think Shabbat Chol HaMoed. Now, who is Gog uMagog? Throughout history, many names were thrown on the table. Russia, United States, India, Pakistan, Iran, Iraq, Korea, North Korea, South Korea. All that maybe just for geography, but the Hidush that we came across was that the word of Gog uMagog is not going to be a physical war. It is going to be a spiritual war. The word Gog comes from the word Gag. What's the meaning of Gag in Hebrew? Rooftop. The highest level of the building is called in Hebrew Gag. Ze mehir Gag. In Hebrew that means this is the top price I'm willing to pay. No more than that. Okay? Now where do we learn such a thing? That the spiritual war is represented in the word Gog. So actually the answer comes from the mitzvah of Ma'akeh. The pasuk says, Ki tipneh bayit hadash, ve'asita ma'akeh legagecha. When you build a home, you build a fence for the rooftop. You put a railing, so chas v'shalom, nobody should fall. The books of Musar tell us that what is the rooftop of the person's life? The brain. So the Torah is telling us, Ve'asita ma'akeh legagecha. Build fences of protection for your brain. Don't allow negative thoughts or thoughts which are not really going in accordance to the Torah to invade our brain. And that is the war of Gog uMagog. And that's why the Gemara writes, Ushmartem et mishmarti, asu mishmeret le mishmarti. The Torah says, God says, please protect yourself. Where do we see this fence in halakha? For example, in the laws of kashrut, that a person cannot eat something cooked by a goy, right? Halakha in Shulchan Aruch, you see a lot of bishul akum, etc. Yain nesech, and part of the reason is to prevent assimilation. Like the takana in the Syrian tradition. We have this takana to prevent assimilation. The Gemara writes, Kadesh asmecha bemutar lach. Rava says, everything that the Torah allows with permission is permission, but you know what? Not because something is permissible, it means that you can have it. For example, wine. Wine is permissible. As long as the wine is kasher, there is a special beracha before, there is a special beracha after. But not because wine is permissible, automatically you're going to drink 4 cups of wine every day. You're going to believe that today is Pesach, or today is Purim. The Ramban, Nachmanides, calls this type of behavior Naval Birshut HaTorah. That a person is acting inappropriately with the permission or the auspices of the Torah, and this is definitely a very valuable lesson for every one of us. Believe me, even rabbis ask questions. Don't be shy to ask. The Mishnah writes in Pirkei Avot, Lo abaishan lomed. But again, the Mishnah writes also, Aseh lecha rab. Make yourself a rabbi. The moment that you're going to start rabbi hopping, oh, I like this rabbi because he says everything yes. I like this rabbi because he says everything no. That's not good either. You have to find a normal center rabbi who knows you. You know, some she'elot, some questions that can make a huge difference on all the surrounding scenarios of the question. They say this about the great Chacham Baruch, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. Okay, he married you, right? Baruch Hashem. You have the zachut, lo pashut, zachita. So what happened with him? Sometimes different people will ask the rabbi the same question, and everyone will get a different answer. Obviously, let's clarify between the parameters of halakha. But since when answers are custom-made? Because it all depends on the person. If I go to someone that is starting and I'm going to throw the book at the person, forget about it. If I have somebody middle of the road, I'll tell them permissible but better avoid it. And someone who is really involved, I said, you know what? Avoid doing it to begin with. And again, as long as that, and that's why Alav Shalom, Rabbi Yosef, which was a classmate from Chacham Baruch, and this Shabbat is the yortzeit of Chacham Rabbi Yosef, so we're going to have a special class in his honor on Shabbat Kodesh, Be'ezat Hashem, and he said, Yesh al mi lismoch, Yavo b'nhum turbalai, or Be'amahmir tavo alav beracha. If a person can avoid doing it or be more strict about it, may he be blessed from heaven. So I think that the message is loud and clear. Everybody needs to have the local Orthodox rabbi. I don't mind if you ask questions, but if a question is of a topic or a sensitive nature that I don't know enough about the person, I will send you back to your rabbi.
I have to talk to you, Rabbi.
Okay, make an appointment.
Okay.
Rabbi?
Because I have 2 classes coming up.
Rabbi.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned, you mentioned before that somebody come ask you a question, you tell him who's your rabbi. And if he has a rabbi who doesn't have a rabbi, then can you go back to him? Is anything wrong that you answer to him?
Okay, it's an excellent question. He's asking if I decide to answer the question, is anything wrong with it? Depends on the question. If you ask me what time is mincha, I will answer you. Oh, Rabbi, is the eruv covering this area? Okay, these are any question that has to do with simple questions, day-to-day life because you need the answer because you are visiting us. So I will try to answer it to the best of my abilities. But if it comes, Rabbi, I have a situation with my mother-in-law. Can you talk? Can you get involved? Rohi, I don't do remote shalom bayit therapy.
Go to the rabbi.
Okay, because you need hands-on.
I see what you mean.
That's all I'm trying to say. Or somebody asked me a question about IVF treatment or IUI treatment, Haltu Shalom. These are procedures which are necessary to do. So I will tell them, you know what, for this kind of situation, perhaps speak to Bonei Olam. You live in Brooklyn. Bonei Olam is one of the biggest institutions, I believe, that deals with fertility treatments, right? Also, there's 8-time Bonei Olam, maybe another one, but these are the two most famous one in America.
I'm glad to
So,
clarify that.
yes. Again, believe me, we would love to help people as much as we can, but as a rabbi, I need to know where to draw the line.
Okay.
Somebody asked me the other question, Rabbi, I need your help. I said, what help do you need? I need you to nullify a marriage.
To what?
To nullify a marriage.
To nullify the
I said, Rohi, first of all, what kind of questions I want to nullify your marriage? Who is it? No, my nephew who lives in Kentucky. I said, first of all, I'm not involved in those type of halachot. I tell you why. Because to make a ruling on such a concept of Jewish law, you need to have big shoulders. Nor that I don't have them. Baruch Hashem, I have them. But in my professional experience was, when it came situations of this type of question, you have to call in the reinforcements. You delegate it to the greatest Hachamim of Israel, who have plenty of years of experience and knowledge. And I asked them, why do you want to cancel it? No, because there is a mental health issue, and she got divorced, and now she's dating a Kohen. I said, Rohi, if she's divorced, she cannot date a Kohen. No, but if you nullify the marriage, because Mekach Ta'ud is giving me already halachic reasonings why to do it. I said, with all due respect, I don't get involved in this type of question.
Too complex.
Too complicated, questions of mamzerim, God forbid. I don't want to say directly, but I'm involved in a case like this, and Ashgaha Peratit, divine providence that I read at the Teshuvah the other day of Rabbi Yosef. And I was reading this Teshuvah, which is not a sefer of Teshuvot, it was the biography of Rabbi Yosef. I said, he's talking to me. He's talking to me. My wife saw that I was getting very excited as I was flipping through the page. I said, I have my wife and my son-in-law, or my wife, both of them, for Shalom Bayit. Okay? They were visiting me for Yom Tov, my son-in-law, the grandkids, and my daughter. And he said, this is the case that is on my desk now. So what did they do? They came to ask me for marriage. I said, you know what? We need to do research. We must do research on the parent. I didn't accept nothing. You're dealing with two single Jewish boys and girls from good kosher families. But there were some situations 30, 40 years ago that maybe things were not done halachically proper. And those actions then have a side effect to them. So now the ball is in the court. You have to provide all the information. I must share it with a big rabbi from another community who knows the family well to make a ruling if they can, proceed. Lo pashut. Lo pashut. When rabbis do their due diligence and they do, the basic guidelines established by the halakha, you preserve the sanctity of Am Israel. And that's part of what we do. Because if we don't do that, maybe apply for retirement. Go do something. Go to a retirement home to be the Shabbat of Friday afternoon song with music. That's all. Let's switch the topic. Zohar of today. Actually, I'm going to save the Zohar belly nether for tomorrow to connect it to the following topic. But let's talk about business matters. The halakha of today discusses the topic of repeat. Known halakha in the Shulchan Aruch. Interest. Now, when it comes to interest, it's not only the transgression by the borrower and the lender. It's actually by the scribe who writes the loan document and the witness that testify the loan document. The Gemara is very against lending without documentation. פשוט. הרוצה לאבד ממונו, ילווה בלי שטר ובלי עדים. The Gemara says, you want to lose your money? Lend money without documents. Without עדים. Right? So the Gemara says, the halakha says, a person who lends money to his friend, obviously as a Torah prohibition of collecting additional money for that transaction. Meaning to say, okay, I borrow 100, I pay you back 110. That's a basic concept of repeat. And it says all the people involved in the transgression, or in the transaction, lender, I just said this, lender, borrower, the two witnesses and the scribe who writes the documents, all are in the same boat. Why? They were shutafim. They were partners in crime. Perhaps not in the collection, but in the drafting of the document. And this was the topic that we were learning last night in the class upstairs with the different tables of shiurim, belifnei aiver lo titen michshol. The prohibition of placing a stumbling block in front of a blind person. And therefore it says, and it doesn't matter if the interest was set up in advance or if the interest was added later on. For example, let's say I borrow from you $100, right? So you tell me, if you pay me in 30 days, no interest. If you pay me in 60 days, 5%. If you pay me in 60 days, 10%. If you pay me in 90 days, 15%. And this is something that halachically happens more often than you think, especially when it comes to factoring, co-signing a mortgage, or co-signing for credit card usage. What happens? Let's say I borrow your credit card. I need to buy an appliance. I don't have enough money. I said to you, can you lend me your credit card? I'll pay you the bill every month. You say, of course, go ahead. How much you need? I need $1,000. Now, in this $1,000, if it's paid in full immediately, no interest, right? Nothing involved. Hazaku baruch. But what happened if I tell you, you know what? I'm going to pay the minimum plus $100 every month. And I said, okay, no problem. If it helps you, I'm happy. I would love to do this mitzvah to you. Guess what? It's not a mitzvah, it's actually an avon. It's an avon. Why? Because now I'm paying interest, not to you, to the bank. But the bank doesn't know me. The bank knows you.
Can't you charge them the interest? That you
Charge
get
them
from the
the
Of
credit
course
card?
not. No, you can't charge them the interest.
Equal
But you
amount.
need to do an heter iska.
Even on the
Yes, you must do an heter iska.
but the same exact interest rate the bank's charging me, I'm letting him pay it.
I understand that. So that means that I'm paying him interest.
by
Just getting
default,
paid
it's
to
not
the
really.
bank.
That's the problem.
So what's the reasoning and logic behind not charging, not charging?
The Torah basic answer is, he's your brother. And if your brother is in need,
Don't bite him.
don't take advantage of him, don't bite him. Et achicha lo tashich. Interest bites. Continue. And it says, the halacha clearly, that God forbid, a person who lends with interest, it affects his livelihood. Another case, if a person lends with interest, okay?
Wait,
That's
one
it.
question on the credit card. If
Yeah.
I get points and I let him
You
use
can
it,
keep the points.
that's not repeat?
Not a bit at all. It's an added benefit that the credit card gives, not because you ask for it. I asked this question.
Ah.
And it's reward.
I did have this question a few years back. Great question. You can keep the points. You don't have to give it to him.
That's not the same as the interest rate?
No, not at all.
Right.
Not at all. It's an incentive that the bank gives. It's different. Now, here it says, let's say that I come to you for a loan and you charge me interest. And I ask you, how can you charge me interest? No, the money that I'm lending you belongs to a goy. I'm his agent. Okay? So in theory, it's kosher, right? The money is not yours. You're just the secretary of the goy. So it says הלכה, התולה מעותיו לומר שהם של נוכרי. A person who says, the money that I'm giving you belongs to a goy, and actually does not, belongs to the Yehudi, ומלווה אותם בריבית, and therefore he justifies lending in ריבית. What's going to be the consequence? The halacha says, Kadosh Baruch Hu ipara mimenu, God forbid. Says, don't worry. God knows the truth. And that's why it says, She'akol galui lefanav. It says, no one can hide from God. Remember the famous pasuk, I think it says in the book of Shmuel, Ki ha'adam ro'e la'inayim, v'Hashem ro'e la'levav. God, a person can only see as far as the eye can see. But God sees the heart. So God knows that this money actually belongs to you. Don't worry about it. Suddenly you have to call a plumber. Suddenly you have a flat tire. Suddenly an investment collapse. You know, a Yehudi must understand that all these things do carry a certain weight. What about to your children? Or what about if somebody wants to give you more? You know what? Because you lend me $100, I save the penalty and my credit score remain good. You know what? I'm going to give you 120. Halacha says mabisir.
Even again,
Mida'ato. It says mida'ato. It says you giving it out of your own benevolence. Mabisir. Even to buy an aliyah. Let's say he lent me $1,000.
right. No,
For $100, I will not buy you an aliyah. Because we don't have aliyot for $100. Okay? But let's say I'm just, I want to inflate the number now. Let's say you lended me 10,000. 10,000, that's a nice amount. Say, you know what, haram, he helped me. Let me buy him an aliyah, Rosh Hashanah, Kippur. Mabisir.
Maybe-
Repeat.
Unless you would buy it for him on normal.
Right. The exception is, if every year I buy him an aliyah, that's a different situation. Now, what about your children? Can you lend money to your children with interest? It says, הלכה אסור. אף על פי שאינו מקפיד עליהם. Even though most likely a father is not going to hunt the child for the loan. ובוודאי נותנו להם במתנה. Of course, not allowed. One more. Israel, listen to this case. A Jew borrowed from a goy. Now the Jew is allowed to pay interest to the goy.
Right.
Not an issue.
Good.
But the goy says, I want Mr. Mizrahi to be, or Mr. Cohen, Malech. I want Mr. Malech, I'm sorry, to be the co-signer for your loan from Mr. Gonzalez. The Lacha says, Asur.
Why?
Why? Excellent question. Because I'm going to collect from you or I paid him, and that money included rebate.
Say it again.
He's going to collect from you
Right.
that you borrow from the goy.
The goy.
And that amount that he's going to collect from you includes the rebate. That's why in halakha, there are a few terms for rebate. One is called rebate. Another one is called abak rebate. Like abak lashon hara. What's abak lashon hara? The dust. Yani
Close enough.
something close enough.
Gossip.
Right. וכן, נוכרי שלווה מישראל בריבית, אסור לישראל להיות לו ערב. A Gentile who borrow from a Jew with interest, and now the Jew lender is asking the Gentile, bring me a Jewish guy to co-sign, because I don't know who you're going to bring me. The halakha says also, this Yehudi cannot be Arab. So what bottom line the halakha is trying to say is that being a guarantor, you need to make sure that there is no issues of rebate of any kind. But Baruch Hashem today, some cases may be applied. And the other day, I spoke to a mortgage company, and one of the first questions that I asked them was, do you have a tera iska in your company? Because if you're borrowing from a mortgage company, and it's a Jewish company, in that amount that you're going to pay every month, you have the interest plus the capital. So they submitted a copy of the Heter Iska. Many banks in Israel, especially those that operate in America, they also have Heter Iska. I have these documents because people ask me, Rabbi, I want to invest in XYZ bank. So they have the documentation in order to allow them to do business in the proper way between the halachic parameters of halakha. That's why the Gemara writes in Eruvin, kiso, koso, kaaso. Kiso means what?
His pocket.
His pocket. How do you handle the financial matters in your life? Is the parameters that you use are within the parameters of halakha, or because God forbid it comes to the topic of money, so then automatically you change and you forgot that there is a volume in the Shulchan Aruch known as Hoshen Mishpat. The other two are, as you know for sure, is koso, drinking habits, and anger management. Okay, so to my good friends of iTorah.com, we say have a great day. For the Spanish audience, we'll be back in approximately 35 minutes for the Spanish class on Tuesday morning. Have a great day, everybody. Baruch Adonai Le'olam.